After a few days of imprisonment at the Shekwan Guild Hall on Cian House Street, my father was escorted away. He was locked in a wooden caged prison wagon pulled by an old horse, and the wagon traveled on a bumpy road through the streets and out of town. He had no idea where he was being taken. The old horse pulling the wagon took hard steps forward, and my father looked numbly at the sun sinking in the dusk. He hadn't expected to end up like this, and couldn't figure it out how. The coachman tyrannically flung his whip. The old horse pulling the cart gasped for breath. The horse's hooves clicked and clacked up the Yellow River iron bridge, and the wagon wheels rolled with a rumbling sound. After the Yellow River to the northern outskirts of the city, walking through a desolate place, finally arrived at the destination Shagou Prison. My father was sent to the secret prison of the Lanzhou Unification and Coordination Office of the Kuomintang. For the first time in his life, my father wore a prison uniform. Suddenly, the double blow of losing his once loving partner and also falling into the hands of the Secret Service and losing his freedom caught my father off guard, and he was unable to understand what had happened. As the rumbling prison van pulled his bewildered father into Shagou Prison in the chilly dusk, he wondered why. It was surprising that he, an artist who had written so many anti-Japanese and salvation songs, had been sent to prison. It was true that he had come to Lanzhou together with Seker and Xiaojun, the communists, but they had come to carry out anti-Japanese propaganda work, and their arrival had once given unprecedented vitality to anti-Japanese propaganda in the Northwest. Though he couldn't figure it out, he was still relatively calm inside. He hadn't committed any crime that would be enough to go to prison. This prison on the north bank of the Yellow River is trapped in a ravine isolated from the world. More than 10 miles away from the city, the prison with the water have to use donkeys to the Yellow River a few miles away to pack. The east side of the prison is the mountain. The mountain has a guard tower. The other 3 sides are the Northwest's unique earth-rammed walls, covered with barbed wire. There were 3 cells in the yard. 2 were large, with large earthen kangs that could sleep 24 people, and the other was a small one where the prisoners were kept in solitary confinement. Most of the small ones were filled with key communist prisoners, women prisoners, and hardened criminals. The trumpet was remodeled from a warehouse, a large cell divided into 12 small wooden cages, like chicken cages. Each cage was 1.5 meters long and 1.5 meters wide, and inside there was a small earthen bed on which was spread a pile of smelly, dirty grass and a broken cotton cover. People can't straighten their legs when they lie down, and when they want to straighten their legs, they can only stand up. When he slept, he desperately leaned his head back and put his feet against the wall, lying like a prawn. My father was detained in cage No. 5 as a suspected communist. When he first came in, he was severely tortured. The agent sat him on a tiger bench, doused him with chili water, and made him kneel on glass, forcing him to admit that he was a communist. As he was being tortured, he asked the agents who beat him, "Is it a crime to propagate anti-Japanese resistance?" He was rewarded with even more vicious beatings. Suddenly, he remembered something that he wondered if it had anything to do with this arrest. In 1941, of his very close classmates in Lanzhou introduced him to a man who the classmates said was an international communist who had returned from the Soviet Union. This man was very mysterious. He had 2 names, both false. Because my father was very capable, he took a liking to him. The 2 of them arranged to meet in a tea house, and the man said to the father, "Luobin, do you want to join an advanced international organization? I know you've always admired Lenin, and this organization called the Communist International, he founded it. We are all in this organization." He took out a form in Russian and asked the father to fill it out. Without much hesitation, my father took the form and filled it out in Russian. When my father went to prison, he thought about what he had experienced in the past few years and the people he had met. Could this friend who used a false name be a Kuomintang agent who asked me to fill out the form first and then arrested me? He observed the secret agents and saw that they did not mention this matter during several interrogations. He realized that they were uneducated and could not know Russian, so he made up his mind not to say anything about this matter and carried it through. The first night my father went to prison, he hadn't eaten all day and was so hungry that he really didn't know how to get through it. He wanted to lie down, but he couldn't straighten his legs, so he could only curl them up, which was very difficult, and he had no choice but to stand up again. He went back and forth several times until he was too sleepy to stay up and finally curled up and went to sleep. In prison, in addition to the arraignment, every day only when the exercise time can go out for a while, he remembered the day he came to the prison on the road to the scene. He used the lead toothpaste skin rolled up to make a pen, wrote the first prison song after being imprisoned, Cooking Smoke. This cooking smoke is fundamentally different from that of the dusk on the prairie, which is free, and is the smoke of people enjoying life after the end of a day's labor, whereas the cooking smoke at this time is the longing for the free life in the world and the accusation against the tyranny of a person who has lost his freedom. The sun sets over the wilderness. The wooden wheels of the prison wagon struggled to spin. The coachman beat his whip grumpily. The hare panicked and jumped into the free wheat field. Prisoners gasping for breath, horses panting. It's a bumpy road ahead. A few cold eyes in the back. The hungry twilight. The smoke is always so far away. My father's singing brought a breath of fresh air to the prison that reeked of death. He fully demonstrated the essence of an artist. That is, tomorrow let me walk on the guillotine. Today, you can't keep me from singing. Whenever he was released, Father sang and danced the Xinjiang dance for his fellow refugees, and he always brought much joy to everyone. There were 12 cages in this large cell. Most of them were communists, and many of them never made it out of this horrible place. Each wooden cage held a prisoner. The father was locked up in cage No. 5. On the opposite side of the cage, No. 6 was locked up mother and daughter, the little girl named Lily, 8 months into the prison with her parents, more than 2 years old when they were locked up in the sand ditch. The little Lily is the only free people here. You can walk around. She often ran to cage No. 5 to look for my father, pestering my father to give her a song, Xinjiang Dance. The girl's father, Luobin, was a deputy secretary of the CCP Gansu Provincial Labor Committee, and her mother, Fan Guiying, was also a member of the CCP underground. Luobin was secretly killed in February 1946 in Shagou Prison. Because the prison authorities never found out the identity of Fan Guiying, the mother and daughter were later finally released. Little Lily was 3 years old when his father was imprisoned in Shagou Prison. The child had been facing these cages since she was 8 months old and knew almost nothing about the outside world. The prisoners taught her culture, and she soon knew all the letters of the English alphabet. She called my father W. At noon, one early winter day, when the prisoners were exercising in the yard, everyone was leaning against the wall to soak up the sun. Little Lily came running back from outside, and she asked her mother excitedly, "Mommy, what do you think is the best food in the world?" Mom couldn't answer her. She ran to my father again and asked loudly, "W, what do you think is the best thing in the world?" My father said apples, roast pork, and chocolate, but little Lily shook her head because she had never seen any of the things my father said. Finally, little Lily pulled out something hidden in her pocket with a great deal of vigor and held it high in the air, saying, "Uncle, look, this is the most delicious in the world." What she held aloft were a few fava beans, given to her by a prison guard. At that moment, Lily's mother turned away and wept bitterly, and my father's eyes were wet, and a hot stream choked his chest. Why? Why? When he returned to his cell, he wrote a song, The Ballad of the Soybean, for little Lily. using a rolled-together toothpaste peel. It would be a children's song like no other in the world, a song written for a little prisoner. My father used toothpaste skins as pens and the surrender book issued by the prison as paper, and composed more than 20 songs in the prison, including Cloud Song, Prisoner's Song, Come, Let's Line Up, I Love My Cell, Song of Little You, and more than 20 other songs. He even wrote a lullaby. In his little number, which was 1.5 meters long and 1.5 meters wide, where he couldn't even stretch out his legs, he even wrote a lullaby, Prisoner's Song, as an expression of his desire for freedom. In essence, Father was a true optimist.